Paul Tudor Jones is a legend. When legends speak, we all listen. Paul Tudor Jones is out in the last couple of weeks saying he will not own fixed income. He thinks inflation is going higher, rates are going higher, which means fixed income would be a loser. We're going to talk with Mr. Dan Byrne and see what he thinks. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Awesome.
By the way, let me share my screen here.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to talk about Paul Tudor Jones' quote, but this is the splash screen on my desktop.
Yeah, which is really just highlighting your utmost respect for Paul Tudor
Yes,
Jones.
that's right. It's his do's and don'ts of trading, and it's well worth the time to read all of these. But I love his first one. Always be with the predominant trend. My metric for everything is a 200-day moving average.
Simple.
Very simple. Buy things above the 200-day. That means in the long term, they're moving up.
There you go.
So let's first my website. For those that are interested, go to breakpointtrading.net. If you want to see my YouTube channel, just this little button right here will take you to it. I'm trying to do that every day. It's just a quick daily scan talking about what happened that day and how to find good stocks, buy good stocks, and how to set stops and move them up.
Love it.
And then there's a newsletter that I publish every weekend right in this little box right here. I also update this market bias. This is something that I created that tracks sectors, industries, metals, currencies, everything about the market. And it just basically takes a summary of it all and tells you what it's doing. And it's actually been pretty accurate to indicate where the market's starting to roll over. So this is updated every day.
Love it.
My newsletter has some cartoons in it. It's got lots of different things, cartoons. How's that bullish position working for you? And then this is something we didn't really talk too much about CPI in the last session, but this is one that I put in the newsletter about CPI going back to 1970.
Yep.
And again, just like I said with the 10-year, it's coming back to normal. That's what it's doing.
Right.
Even if it ticks up a little bit like it did this month and might be flat next month, but by the spring, it's going to be below this 2% level again, just like it was through this whole period from 2010 to 2020.
Yep.
Most of that period, it was below 2%.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. So all that's in the newsletter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on this article from Paul Tudor Jones. I mean, not from Paul Tudor Jones, but it's actually from Real Investment Advice right here. So here's what Paul Tudor Jones said. Date on this is Friday, 15th. I won't own fixed income. And it goes into explain why he thinks that, because this perspective reflects a longstanding fear that sustained borrowing will trigger inflation, raise interest rates, and eventually overwhelm the government's ability to manage its debt obligations. His thesis is that interest rates will rise as the government goes broke. But what these guys say, and I have a lot of respect for these guys, I put excerpts from their newsletter. It's a free newsletter, so anybody that wants it, just log on to their site and put in your email address, and they'll send you the newsletter every week. And it's got a wealth of information, and I just love the way that they analyze things. So what he says is, however, a closer look at historical precedent and current fiscal dynamics suggests these concerns are overstated. The U.S. economy has structural strengths that make an imminent fiscal collapse unlikely. And then he goes on to prove that. He talks about the fundamentals of interest rates. This is an interesting chart here. This is composite of wages, GDP, and inflation. And the red line down here and the red dashed line is wages, GDP, and inflation. And the black line is the 10-year treasury. And notice, going back to 1965, how in general, the 10-year treasury has been above GDP
Right.
until recently. This is COVID, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but now they're aligned again. But look where the two lines are meeting, right here. The 10-year is actually going lower than GDP.
Hmm.
This is a long-term view of things. So visually, correlation between economic composite and rates is high. Long-term trend lines suggest normalization of the economy and rates at 2.5%, assuming no recession. Jones's primary argument for not owning debt has nothing to do with the actual drivers of interest rates, right?
Yep.
So debt and interest rates explains that the non-linear relationship between them. And then he talks about other countries, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, have successfully issued long-term debt at near zero, even negative interest rates. And Paul Tudor Jones, in his article, mentioned Japan as well. So Jones is concerned about inflation resulting from high deficits, overlooks the complex interplay of fiscal and monetary policy and structural economic factors. Recent inflationary pressures in the US were driven largely by supply chain disruptions, energy shocks, and pandemic-related spending, rather than chronic deficits.
Yeah.
And that is true.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. The fallacy in Jones' argument should be evident. Interest rate increases without a subsequent rise in economic growth and wages to support higher borrowing costs slows economic activity. Slowing economic growth leads to increased unemployment, thereby reducing inflation and interest rates. And that's basically the whole thesis that you and I have been talking about.
Yeah, that's the business cycle, basically.
That's the business cycle. That's right. And that's why I think as we go into next year, the economy will start to falter. Unemployment will start to rise. The Fed will have to, they probably will pause in the first quarter next year, but as they start seeing these things happen, they'll probably continue to start cutting.
Well, this is exactly why I've made my call about 2025. Higher, I mean, just look at it. We are going to have higher borrowing costs, and more importantly, higher than experts were calling for a month ago.
Right.
So clearly that's going to slow economic activity. That will slow growth trends. That will increase unemployment. And then the Fed will be forced to respond.
Yes. And then interest rates will come down.
Exactly. That's 2025 in a nutshell. I just think my gut opinion is I think the Fed is on pause longer than most people think. I again, like you think.
On pause, meaning
no cuts.
They're not going to cut anymore.
Yeah, I think they get one more cut in December. They get the 100th off that they wanted. They're going to be at what they now call the new neutral. And I mean, I don't know what you call it, best case, worst case, depending how you look at this. I think the best case for the first rate cut next year is early Q3.
Well, I don't think they will be able to wait that long. Frankly.
Yeah, and I think that's again, I think
I'm not saying that they don't want to wait that long. I think that's what they would like to do.
Right.
But I don't think that they will be able to wait that long based on what's happening with the economy.
So to try to play this out, you think into Q1, unemployment goes up meaningful. Let's try to put a number on that. It goes from 4.3 to 4.8. I'm just trying to put a number on it.
I'd say by the end of Q1, I would say 4.5.
You think that's enough to make them cut?
Well, I think the trend will be enough.
What are we at? 4.3 today?
Yeah.
No, that's not going to be enough. We've already been to 4.5 and back.
Well, 4.4 was their number. That was the number that they wanted to see.
Yeah, that's true. We will get a dot plot, I think, in December. That'll be interesting to see if they've changed that. But yeah, I don't think 4.5 makes them cut at all. And then GDP.
I think if it's spiking, 4.8 probably for sure.
Yeah, 4.8's a number they'll cut at 4.8. But what do you think? Do you think GDP goes negative? Do you think GDP goes negative in Q1?
Not in Q1.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that as well. So okay.
Now Q1 is going to actually start off looking pretty good.
I agree.
It's going to end looking dicey, and Q2 is going to start looking ugly.
Yeah, it's so awesome that we agree on the dominoes. The timing is off slightly.
Mm-hmm.
I think Q1 will be fine. I think Q2 will start looking dicey, and Q3 will be ugly. So we're off a quarter.
Well, I think Q3 will be a continuation of ugly.
Yeah. Okay.
But look at the we looked at this in the last session, but the 30-year is the dark blue line. The pink one is the 10-year. And this dotted red line is the median point over 45 years. Going all the way back to 1990. That is the median. All right. So both of the 30-year and the 10-year are basically coming right back to median. It's the Fed rates that are still too high. So
Agreed.
That's why I think they're going to cut again in December.
And you're saying a quarter, right? Not 50.
Yeah, a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So they cut a quarter in December. Your base case is the next rate cut is when? You thinking it's Q2?
I think it will be, I think Q1 is going to actually look okay. And then I think when earnings start coming in after Q1, so sometime in April,
okay,
the earnings might be all right, but their forward guidance is not going to be good.
Okay.
So the market always leads the economy. So the market is going to start knowing this sometime mid-January, I think.
Oh, really?
So early Q1, the market's going to be giving us clues ahead of time.
Okay.
And then the economy will start falling apart in Q2.
Got it.
That's what
this is going to be fun, man. I love the fact that we're going to be doing this in real time every Sunday together, or at least most Sundays. It'll be fun to watch.
So he goes on to talk about the Japan experience. So Jones' example of the Japan experience with debt fails to support his concerns. In Japan, high debt levels did not lead to runaway inflation or surging interest rates. Despite a 250% debt to GDP ratio.
And in fact, it was the reverse. Yeah.
It was the reverse. They faced deflation and falling interest rates.
Correct.
So, and there's a chart just to prove that out. So, I mean, Japan is the proof that just because you have high debt does not necessarily mean that you're going to get inflation and higher interest rates. Now, it does mean other things. It means that money has to come out of somewhere else to pay for the interest on that debt. So it will force us, and maybe Elon will be ahead of the curve on this, but it will force us to start cutting unnecessary programs because the interest rate won't allow us to do anything else. And like I have always said, the bond market is the one that will force the government to stop spending.
Yeah, the bond market is in charge for sure.
So as he says, in advanced economies with robust institutions and stable financial systems, inflation risks from deficits are more manageable than Paul Tudor Jones suggests. I'm certainly not ignoring the current fiscal challenges. Those are undeniable with the national debt nearing 120% of GDP. However, those levels suggest economic growth will weaken, inflation will ease, and interest rates will decline over time.
There you go.
And then he goes on to talk about debt rollovers and how the government rolls the debt over. This is interesting chart right here. The black line is GDP, real GDP. The red line is 10-year interest rate, 10-year note. And then the green and the red below is the difference between the two.
Oh, okay.
So,
oh, wow.
So if it's green, it means the 10-year is lower than GDP.
Got it.
Right. Okay. So right now, it's rarely been red, and usually it's during a recession. So there's COVID. Here's 2008.
GFC.
Right there.
Yeah.
Here's 2001. Yeah. So it's interesting. U.S. is unlikely to face a fiscal crisis anytime soon. All right. So that's his thesis. This guy does great research. I love his stuff. I put excerpts in my newsletter as often as I can, and I put a link in so people can go out.
Can you blow it up so we can see the URL just a little bit better?
Let's see.
It's real investing.
It's realinvestmentadvice.com.
Got it. Real investment.
I don't think I can blow this part up here.
No, that's fine.
Realinvestmentadvice.com.
And it's a free newsletter. Thank you for bringing this.
It's a free newsletter.
It's conversation.
He's got lots of good content too. And just before we end this, I want to go back as we're talking about this, and I have said for a while that yes, all the people talking about the debt crashing the economy, they will be right at some point.
Eventually, yeah.
Just like we talked about in the last session. These articles may very well be well researched and may very well be right, but the timing is not right.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
we are still in a secular bull market. I'm expecting the secular bull to run to 2029 to 2033, somewhere in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly, but I mean, you can, this is on the homepage of my website. So you can just look at this every week if you want to and just see where we are. You'll know when the whole market is getting ready to crash because these things are going to start to tell you. So that's why I said, you know, in the last session, your listeners, if they continue to tune in, they're going to have advanced warning of what's coming.
Yep.
So they're not going to get caught with the market crashing way down, you know, to real low. So this is still, we're still in a secular bull market. I think you can see 2020 right there, or 2022 right there.
Yep.
You blow it up a little bit. So there's 2022 right here.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2025 is going to look similar to that, but will not go below this 200-week moving average that the market has been above all the way back to 2011.
Yep. Love it.
And through this whole secular bull market, never went below that 200-week moving average. I think we probably will come down to it again in 25 and then bounce and start going back up. And we will continue to go up until the secular bull ends. And I think the reason that it will end will be the debt.
Got it.
I think that is what the catalyst will be, but not yet.
Love it. Well, Dan, I appreciate your time each and every Sunday. I know the audience does as well. Show the URL for your breakpointtrading.net and the button for your YouTube channel, please.
Sure. It's breakpointtrading.net right there. And right in the upper right is the YouTube channel button. You can click there, and I try to post one. It's only 25 or 30 minutes. Try to post one every day, giving a review of what the market did, and then a little teaching about how to find good stocks, where to buy them, and then how to set stops.
Again, folks, show him some love. He's been coming almost at 3 years now. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Show him some love. Dan, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good weekend.